Fox Business Alert, the battle lines are drawn. Democrats lining up on the side of unrestricted, unaccountable government spending, and they're ready to fight for every last penny. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Brenberg, joined by my co-host Taylor Riggs, Cheryl Casoni in for Dagan McDowell, Jackie DeAngelis, and Michael Lee Strategies founder Michael Lee. Welcome to the Big Money Show. We begin with the clash over cuts. DOGE is uncovering billions in waste, and Washington is digging in its heels.
Elon, come here and face us. Bring your on over here.
There's another branch of government in Article 3, the courts.
We will fight it out in Congress. We will fight it out in the courts. We will fight it out across this country.
Elon Musk needs to keep his grubby hands, his greedy, grubby hands off of our government.
They're even ready to shut down the government to do it. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is leading the charge. He's created a whistleblower tip line so federal workers can tattle on Trump's budget cuts. But what are they defending? Things like the Air Force's $2.3 million program to train airmen in inclusive leadership? Good luck on the battlefield with your unconscious bias training. Michael Lee, you are a guy who's not into soap opera. These folks are in Washington, D.C. They want to make a mess. They want to make a big hoopla, but you're a markets guy. What do the markets think about what Musk is doing, Trump is doing, and their likelihood of success ultimately?
Well, as a markets guy, as a numbers guy, I am shocked at how big the numbers are that Elon is coming up with. It may seem like Elon speaks in hyperbole like Trump, but he doesn't. This is one of the smartest men, one of the most influential men that has ever walked the face of the earth. And so when he's out there saying, we're going to find well in excess of $1 trillion on an annual basis from waste, fraud, and abuse and programs that we don't need, that is mind-blowing considering the size of our deficit is $2.5 trillion. So right now, if you're like me and you're sitting here saying, okay, well, 20 cents out of every dollar that comes into the federal treasury goes to pay interest on debt. And we're creating a new $1 trillion every 100 days or so. This has to stop. We need dramatic change. We need an almost balanced budget in the next 24 months. Otherwise, that 20 cents of every dollar that's coming in becomes 25, 30, 40, 50, and then you have to make horrible decisions to keep our country going. So I think this is unbelievable news. I think the Democrats are making a massive political miscalculus. You know, recent polling out by Rasmussen saying Elon's far more popular than the Democrat Party at the moment. This is the wrong tact. If they want to shut down the government, I mean, that's like telling a vegan he can't have meat. That's fine.
That's good.
You're speaking to a vegetarian here, so I'm nodding along.
I just want to talk a little bit about what this particular pause means with respect to all of these court cases, because Elizabeth Warren was saying we'll challenge these things in court, and that's how this is going to go, whatever particular issue it is. So we're talking about the block on Trump's buyout. Many people, I think it was more than 65,000, wanted to take that buyout offer. They brought this case in Boston. It's Judge O'Toole, appointed by Bill Clinton, so that gives you a sense. I have to guess that Boston had jurisdiction, but they may have had choice of venue, and then therefore they would choose a venue that would be favorable to them. So it's a case that the unions are basically bringing, and they're saying that what Trump is trying to do is what's a slapdash. It's a failure to consider the functioning of the government. The opposition is saying it's actually a humane off-ramp with respect to accomplishing his agenda. And we had questioned why he was giving such great terms, actually. I mean, he could have just fired them and not given them any severance or any kind of a buyout. And so I think that they kind of foresaw this coming, and they thought if we give them better terms, it makes our position a little bit more favorable. And of course, this is not the only suit. We're going to talk about it later, but the union that represents the CFPB is also bringing a similar suit, and they're just going to challenge these to slow it down. Right now, they can't proceed with the buyout, and his agenda gets stalled that way.
You know, actually, Bill McGurn makes a really good point about the CFPB. I'm glad you brought that up, Jackie, because he talks about it in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal this morning. And one of the things he says about, well, the title is Elon Musk is having a ball, which, let's be clear, he should be. And he may not be able to get all the cuts that he wants. But he talks about the CFPB because, look, he goes, for years, Congress has chipped away at presidential powers, creating agencies looking at you. This is a direct quote, looking at you, CPSC, as it tries to insulate itself from presidential authority. these agencies appeal to progressives. And he goes on to talk about the egregious amount of money that these progressive policies, USAID, we can go back to that for a moment.
Right.
We can, the military's next. Secretary Hegseth was just speaking over in Germany, and he said, we're opening the books, bring it on, because if you start to pull back money that's being wasted at the Defense Department, that's money that goes to warriors, that goes to protect our military men and women. But at the end of the day, and that ruling that you talked about, that move by the judge, all of this is going to end up in the court system. It's all going to end up at the Supreme Court. Let's do it now versus wait, because I think Elon Musk has a lot more work to do.
Right.
When it comes to CFPB, you guys, I'm an old-fashioned girl. If I was sitting in front of Jay Powell, like a lot of the senators are today, I'd be asking him about the balance sheet and the runoff and mortgage-backed securities and, whoa, inflation maybe. But a lot of his questions, Mike Lee, were about the CFPB, because we've had a lot of interesting conversations on this program where people on the left think that you can't shut it down because it's congressional authority, but people on the right, Unleash Prosperity founder Stephen Moore, E.J. Antoni, say, no, actually, the Fed approves the CFPB's budget request. And when asked, Powell said, how many times have you turned down a request? He says, 0. We always give them the money they ask for because legally we can't deny them. But the irony is it's supposed to be coming from the Federal Reserve's profits. They don't have any profits. There are no profits. They've been losing hundreds of billions of dollars, according to E.J. Antoni.
Right.
But every time they ask for a couple $100 million, the Fed has to say yes. So that actually, surprisingly, was a twist in the testimony today, where Jay Powell had to answer questions about the CFPB, and maybe brings to light who really is in charge of this thing.
So, if you go back to the beginning of the first Trump administration, there was a Supreme Court case that shook up the CFPB because it was designed to basically be an unaccountable institution.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? Like a fourth branch of government where you have three co-equal branches, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. And bringing all this together, district judges in Boston, in Rhode Island, in New York are not co-equal with the executive, and they cannot take out the executive's power. They can't declare war. They can't write laws. They can rule on laws, but I think we're getting to a point where the Trump administration says to the Supreme Court, you either need to rule on this now or we're going to ignore it until you rule on it, because this is ridiculous. You can't tell me that the president and his appointees can't run an executive agency. And to that point, bringing it all back, you can't have an agency that's an executive agency that exists outside the power of the executive. And maybe you can't completely shut down these agencies, but you can take the employees from 15,000 to 200.
But they're Biden-appointed judges. Let's be clear. If you look at every case that's been presented right now, they're Biden-appointed judges.
I think, though, you made the key point. They're going to get involved in little ways right now and try to block things. President Trump runs the executive. If he wants to fire executive branch people, he will do it, and he should have a way to do it. If we want to get rid of the CFPB, I don't know if Steve Moore's right. I don't know if the people on the left are right. I don't care. At some point, you get Congress together and say, guys, pass a law. This is the worst agency that's ever existed. It is Elizabeth Warren's dream for all the worst reasons. And it's got to go. And I think the American people are on board with that, because they don't look at what's happening. They don't see Maxine Waters out there swearing at Elon Musk and say, that's someone I want to follow.
Yeah, right.
Does anybody say that?
Look, they created it to deal with the financial crisis. Taylor talked about that yesterday. Fair enough. I mean, that was a very dark time in our nation's economy and for our financial markets, and people were losing homes left and right and losing their livelihoods. But that was then and this is now. And I don't think there is any place for the CFPB.
No need to make it darker with terrible bureaucratic policy.